Greetings and welcome back to another JR Gladys Society member highlight video. I am Alvin Jones. I'm a pediatric orthopedic surgeon at Dayton Children's Hospital.
I'm Jamil Kendall. I'm a PGY3, soon to be PGY4 at the Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon. And I'd like to welcome to join us today, Dr. Cherise Sparks. Dr. Sparks went to the University of Kansas for medical school, where she was selected to the AOA. Then went to the University of Arkansas for orthopedic surgery training. Following residency, completed a fellowship in Germany, in addition to a trauma fellowship at Harvard University. She served for over a decade as the medical director for several orthopedic groups, implementing orthopedic trauma programs and serving as a traumatologist. She's since made a transition out of clinical medicine and now serves as a vice president of medical, preclinical, and clinical affairs, focusing on trauma, craniofacial, and biomaterials at Johnson & Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Sparks. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the kind invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you. It's not a very understood or, very highly visual field of orthopedic practice that you're participating in. So I did feel like this was a valuable talk to have so that our membership could kind of see what's possible and the other alternatives that you can do in orthopedic surgery that are a little non-traditional. Really great to have this conversation with you. And I'm really interested in hearing how your early practice kind of started and how you ended up getting introduced to this role and making that transition.
Well, thanks for asking. Early practice probably looked like most everybody else's. I made a couple of conscious decisions. One, that I didn't want to be in an academic institution. And I think maybe that was a little short-sighted on my side because I just didn't have anybody to help me understand how important clinical research really is. And therefore, I didn't have a vision to it. It seemed daunting. Whenever I heard professors complain or something, they were all like complaining about, oh man, I got to publish this and I got to do that. And I didn't want to do that. So being a clinician in a clinical residential practice was what I chose to do. And so I actually chose to go to a level 2 center in a smaller city because I really felt like that's where the opportunity to actually impact more patients' lives was. Because most of the time in these smaller community hospitals, they have to ship critically injured patients to larger facilities, moving them away from their family, moving them away from their support system. So an opportunity presented itself for me to go to a smaller community, be a trauma surgeon. I didn't really understand the gravity of being the only trauma surgeon for a pretty broad area, but I learned that pretty quickly. So, that made it very fun, very interesting. And, after my second year in practice, it really validated everything about orthopedics that I wanted to do and how I wanted to practice medicine. So I felt like I made the right decisions. There are challenges along the way, just getting your boards taken care of, being in a place where you can be there 2 years to do your board collection and understand the patient population. Also have a supportive system, around you. The hospital that I worked for, they understood now that they were going to, have to use a new muscle, taking care of critically injured patients, because now you have a surgeon that can do pelvis and acetabular fractures, do multiple and polytrauma patients. So they had to sort of up their game on their general surgeons, had to up their game on their ICU, had to up their game for the community offerings for rehab for these patients, and in their own inpatient rehabs, provide services that they hadn't provided before. And I was very, very fortunate to work for a hospital system that was all in and said, yes, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to impact the community. And so I began to become more interested in helping other facilities like ours understand what it would mean to transition from like a level 3 or an undesignated American College of Surgeons trauma facility to becoming a 2 or a 1. And so During my practice, I actually started a company where I and 6 other orthopedic surgeons, we provided services to smaller community hospitals that couldn't otherwise afford a traumatologist or have trauma. And we provided the trauma services from end to end for that facility. So that meant from the time they hit the ER to the time they were discharged, and we wrote up all of their discharge orders, and then had a on-site clinic for the follow-up of those trauma patients. And it kind of resembled like a locum tenens practice. You know, the 6 of us switched off, so we would only work a week on, a week off, something like that, a couple of weeks a month in these other facilities. But that allowed those facilities to get together what they wanted and kind of decide if they wanted to play trauma or they didn't want to play trauma, because it's a kind of a big decision. And that worked very well. So that maybe was a little bit of a nudge that, you know, I wanted to do something other than just clinical practice. So let's fast forward 15 years. And one of my very, very good friends is the North American leader for sales for DePuy Synthes. At the time, it was Synthes, but Synthes got acquired by Johnson & Johnson. And at the time, you know, he came to me and he said, "Hey, what would you think about coming in and working at J&J?" And, you know, of course, I had to look right and I had to look left to see if somebody was punking me. Was there a camera somewhere saying, you know, what's that all about? But he was very serious. He sent me the job description. Synthes, if you have any history with them, you know that they don't have any in-house physicians. They do all of their sort of clinical exploration through external KOLs or key opinion leaders. And I was an AO faculty and also a previous AO fellow. And so, but I began to look at this Johnson & Johnson opportunity. I was like, wow, you know, this may be like the perfect storm. A company that I know and that I trust, Synthes, and also the largest healthcare company in the world, Johnson & Johnson, is asking me to come take a look to help them run their medical, clinical, and preclinical operations. And so it took me about 8 months, but what I decided was, here's an opportunity for me to impact more than one patient at a time, like I can do as a surgeon. And now with the global footprint of Johnson & Johnson, I have the opportunity to impact tens of thousands, maybe even millions of patients on a daily basis. So the other thing that was very interesting, I'm the first orthopedic trauma surgeon to be hired by Johnson & Johnson. And so the role was actually very foundational. So I got to shape it a lot. So I've been there now 5.5 years, and it's continuing to evolve. I started with no staff. You know, I started with nobody reporting to me. Now I have a staff of 18 people that report to me. I have 6 physicians that report to me, 3 nurses, 4 PhDs. So, you know, I have a pretty wide breadth of folks. And so we take care of anything that impacts the patient in any way must come through our office. So from a safety standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a implant questions, you know, standpoint, anything like that. And then on the other side, it's a highly regulated business. So I had to understand what that meant to interact with the FDA, for example. And within the first 2 weeks of my being there, I had to make a critical decision to decide to recall one of our products from the market. So my job is different every single day. I haven't done the same thing in 5.5 years since I've been there. It's a growth opportunity, but it's also an opportunity to not only from a patient standpoint, you know, but also understanding research and development, getting right in and guiding how products are developed, you know, giving the engineers insights that they wouldn't otherwise have because they're not clinicians and they've never taken care of a patient. Right. You know, understanding marketing, doing that, risk analysis, acquisitions and mergers, understanding what the environment's all about, digital strategies and solutions, understanding just that strategy. How does a business actually work? One as large as Synthes or DePuy Synthes and Johnson & Johnson. How do they interact with the world around them? So it's a tremendous opportunity, and I touch in my role now, and I've been promoted to vice president. There are only 1,500 vice presidents in Johnson & Johnson. So it's a pretty small number out of 165,000 employees. So, you know, so so I get to interact in different ways. And like I said, I think if you wanted to look at industry, wherever your interest lies, there's probably a role for you. Maybe you're a logistics person, so you want to learn about supply chain and what that means to you. Maybe you're a big finance person, so you can come in and do finance and see how it impacts global solutions and the delivery of global products. Maybe you thought you wanted to be a marketer, so you can get in there and learn how to market stuff. So, but having that clinician, having the background of actually served patients for more than a year or two, completed all your training, gotten your certifications, and good standing across medicine. I guess I need to put that little caveat on. I didn't leave surgery because I was running from anything. I'd never been sued as a trauma surgeon. I didn't hate my patients. I just thought this was a tremendous opportunity that hardly anybody ever gets. And the best part was I'm still board certified till 2029, and I still have licenses to practice medicine in 6 states. So I might need one of you guys to help me if I decided to go back after 5 years, to get back into it again. But I could do that. So I think having all those options gives you an opportunity to look, at a job such as mine. And the last thing I'll say about that, so I stop running on, is in a company such as J&J, you don't have to stay in orthopedics. Let's say you have an interest in general surgery, or you have an interest in consumer, like contact or vision, contact lenses. J&J does everything. And so, the ability to move within the company is also there. So I would say if you're looking at industry, look at the industry for the unique interests that you have, because that's the thing that's going to keep you there. That's the thing that's going to get you there, and that's the thing that's going to keep you there.
Oh,
I
think that's awesome.
So much interesting things to kind of delve into. I'm go ahead and let you, Jamil, ask.
I actually worked as a sales rep before med school for a total joints company, and I've so kind of been on the other side a little bit, and it's like two sides of the same coin almost. And really getting that perspective, I think, has helped me a lot in medical school and a lot as a resident. And so I have 2 questions that are kind of related. You said you were the first orthopedic surgeon hired at J&J. Since you're hiring, have they, wanted to bring on more clinicians and wanted to have more of that influence on decision making? And then related to that,
let me qualify one thing, clarify one thing for you. First orthopedic trauma surgeon. They have had orthopedic surgeons before, because they have a global orthopedics business. So there have been other orthopedic surgeons, but not a trauma surgeon to service the trauma business. So, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. And your next question.
Perfect. Well, so for someone at my stage, someone who's early in their practice, who maybe have these kind of dreams to not practice clinically for I know you were kind of offered this opportunity, but there are some people who maybe don't want to practice for 20 years, don't want to practice for 10 years, want to take these talents and take them in a different direction. Do you have any advice for those people and how they should go about making the connections necessary or the steps necessary to make a leap such as yours?
Jamal, those are great questions, and I think let's answer the first one. So first, on my staff alone, I have 4 orthopedic surgeons and 1 craniomaxillofacial and facial plastic surgeon that directly report to me. So, but we also have the total joints business, and there are 3 total joint surgeons there. And then we have the sports medicine business, and we have an orthopedic hand and upper extremity surgeon that leads that business. So yes, they got the hint to know that having deep clinical insights is important. So they've gone directly to the source of what that main business is about to try to answer that. And I'm sorry, Alvin, you had
I was just trying to clarify, do all of those kind of report up to you? All those different?
That's a great question, but no. So my area is trauma, craniomaxillofacial, and biomaterials. So there is a leader for sports and joints together. And then there's also a leader for spine. And then we the four of us then report to an even higher leader. That's the chief medical officer of medical device.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So your next question about what do you do to prepare, and should you be looking at that right now? Yes. So I think having an eye to what's possible is so important in how you make decisions about what you will and will not do. But what I will say first and foremost, is you must be excellent at what you do as a physician and as a surgeon. So it's very important that you complete your training in good standing. It's very important that you get board certified. It's very important that you actually do provide care independent of anybody else. So on your own, so be in practice. That's what's really, really important. And, the threshold today is between 7 and 10 years of clinical practice. They really like to see 10 or more, because during that time, we know that medicine moves pretty quickly. And so in 10 years, you're going to see a lot of change in how patients are treated. And then you're also going to be looking forward from that change that you're currently in. And those are the insights that people in industry are really looking for. What's the next greatest thing? That's the kind of thing. And then how do you inform decisions, or help the company have informed decisions about what they do and what they don't do, where they don't play, and things like that. So I think it's important to know yourself, number one, to know if you think you have an interest. But it's also important not to box yourself in. Don't try to be maybe like me, even though that would be flattering and all that. But, but know that there are other opportunities. So like in R&D, if you have an engineering bent, even though you're not an engineer, but you think like an engineer, maybe you want to be the associate that goes in and helps the engineers to understand from an engineering perspective, not a patient's perspective, but then you're able to put those things together. Like I said, maybe an MBA. Maybe you want to run the business. So you want to be on a more strategic side of the business rather than the close clinical presentation. So the thing that I would say is, yes, now that you know that there's an opportunity to do that, don't box yourself in. Understand what your interests are. And like I said, because it's going to be a big decision to leave clinical practice, because I'm going to tell you the blood and sweat and tears that you are, have right now to get there, just to get there. And for Alvin and I, for us to be there, that was a lot of work. That was hard. That was, that wasn't easy. That wasn't something that you want to just give up because. So there has to be something sort of greater later for you out there. And that's up to you, what that looks like. But I think it's really important to get the word out that these opportunities are there, so you can begin to think about it at least and shape what you want to do. And then one of the biggest things for us as clinicians, especially orthopedic surgeons, is there are not very many of us that look at these opportunities. So the companies are chomping at the bit to get you. So don't go easily. Make them negotiate. Make them pay what you want them to pay. Get the benefits, get the vacation, get all that stuff. And I'm going to tell you, your first contract with industry is your best contract with industry. So you want to start high, because everything that you do thereafter builds on that foundation. So you get like an annual bonus, which is a percentage of how much your salary is. So if your salary is higher, that bonus is higher. And you get an annual cost of living, increase. And that's all a percentage of where you started, your annual performance raise, your what they call long-term incentives. So stocks and options, those are all based on the amount of money that you came in making. And then it goes on to how many years you've been there, So just don't be too excited. Now, I probably left some stuff on the table because I was kind of excited when I joined, but I'm telling everybody else that followed me, don't be too excited. Make them sweat. Make them come get you.
Right. You are very valuable, right? So they have to pay for it. You mentioned something too that I was interested in following up on. Board certification. How does that play a role in this setting? Like, are you able to maintain that in that arena?
Oh, great question, because I'm doing it right now. So, the board has this WLA, so that longitudinal learning thing. So
Right.
I read those articles and take the test every year, and I still have to do all my CMEs, but I'm on a special track where I don't have to present X-rays at the end. Now, but that also means that, but my board certification will be, just as valid as yours. But if I wanted to go back and go to get hospital privileges, then I would have to write to the board and tell them that I'm going to be proctored. And then they would look at, like, I think they said 6 months worth of cases if I wanted to go back. And then they would move it. So it has a different name. And right now it's escaping me what the name is. But I'm doing the same thing that you're doing. So you can continue to be board certified, even though you're not doing clinical practice.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, great.
Yeah. And it costs the same amount of money. So I didn't get a discount. It costs the same. But the other part is Johnson & Johnson is paying my boards. So they pay for my state licenses every year. They pay for my board exams. They pay for my membership to Gladden. They pay for my membership to AAOS. They pay for my membership to OTA. So those are just a few of the benefits of, working at industry.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, I am going to now try and wrap us up, since we are probably at the end of our discussion. And I do want to ask the questions I typically ask all of our guests. And that is, one, what do you want to see from the J.R. Gladden Orthopedic Society as a member in terms of adding value to you? And then two, what do you feel like as a member in your role, you feel like you provide to the society and help us achieve our goals?
Okay, the first one, what do I want from J.R. Gladden Orthopedic Society? I want the feeling of community. I want the feeling of value. I want to look right and left and see people that look like me. And I want the society to continue to advocate for those that sometimes can't advocate for themselves. So I want to see more representation on the board, the American Board of Orthopedic Surgeons. I want us to have a voice there, because that determines some people's future. And I don't think we've had a loud enough voice there. So advocacy is something that I think the society can bring. I think we need to demonstrate and flex our muscles, because we are an organization that is larger than anybody expects us to be. And I think that can have a very, very impactful policy impact on the way orthopedics is practiced and how orthopedic surgeons are viewed. So those are just a few things that I think the society can do. And in my role, what can I do for the society? Well, I've already been trying. So first of all, any opportunity I have to come and speak, I'm coming to speak, because the thing that I want you to know now is now you know somebody in industry. So you know me now. But I've been working with Dr. Morgan and Dr. Carson and others, and Dr. Wells and others now, to introduce each surgeon that has an interest in even just dabbling in building a relationship with the industry. I'm building a repository of CVs and talents, so that when the company has needs, they don't get to say, oh, we couldn't find any Black doctors to do this. I'm going to say, yeah, here I got 20, 25, 30, 40, so we're building that repository right now. There is a huge shift in the evidence that is required to keep these medical devices on the market now. So I'm also looking with Dr. Morgan's help for the Cobb Scholars to help us do research on our products. So providing funding for doing clinical research, and, just understanding and looking at what the J.R. Gladden Society's goals are. We're still in conversation about that. And that's something that I'm going to challenge you guys about. I've been asking for now almost 6 months. What does Gladden want to do? And how can DePuy Synthes and J&J help? And we haven't really defined that. So that's the other thing I think I need you to do is, where do we need to play? And finally, from my perspective, to make us most successful and to build relationships within a company, I think we have to, not from a defeatist standpoint, start small, but start small and have great successes, and have continued success, one small success at a time, because that's what ignites J&J. They like, oh, I'm getting on a train of where there's some good stuff happening, so I want to stay on the train. But if we only have one big, huge, successful thing and then we fizzle out, they might invest for 1 year, but I don't want them to. I want them on the hook for a long period of time. I want them on the hook for a sustained period of time, so we can continue the work that you and the society are doing to help promote us to the place that we actually deserve to be.
Awesome. Great. I do look forward to continuing that conversation. And thank you so much for your time. And it was a pleasure hearing all about your journey. And I do think this is going to be incredibly valuable to our membership. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for the gracious invitation and opportunity to speak. And please know, I wasn't kidding. When you need me, you can call on me, and I'm happy to come back.
Awesome. Great.
And Jamel, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate
it. Reach out. Don't suffer in silence, brother. Reach out.
Thank you.
All right.